Hello. I think we're live now. Yes, we are.
Hey, Matt.
Sorry about being a few minutes late. We're going live on Instagram this time, and turns out that's more of a hassle. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. This is Carlton Scott. I'm going to let him talk in a minute, kind of introduce himself a bit. But I'm really excited about having Carlton on because it was a little over a year ago that it was I was sitting in a men's retreat listening to Carlton's story, and that's when it hit me that like this thing that I wanted to do as a documentary at first was actually going to be a podcast. So it was actually during your testimony and everything that all that happened.
Cool.
Yeah, so really excited to have you on. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and we'll go from there.
All right. Like you said, I'm Carlton Scott. Anybody used to like what I do, or?
Yeah. Go a little bit about what you do, and
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So I'm married, of course, to my wife, going on 31 years.
31 years.
Have a son that's 29 years old. He's a police officer with the Hot Springs Fire Department, or Police Department, and I'm with the fire department. Been there for 27 years.
Nice.
So excited to be here. A little nervous.
Yeah.
But excited.
No, I'm really excited to have you on. And today, kind of the kind of crux of what we're talking about is marriage. And I just for context, for people kind of watching out there, Carlton and his wife Carrie have twice now led us through this study called Reengage, which is a marriage study that we do at our church, and it's been amazing, and we're already talking about doing it again next year because it's so good. Like, I mean, so we were 8 years into marriage before we went through Reengage the first time, but a lot happened that time we were going through it, and it was just like God's timing is perfect, and His placement of you and Carrie in our lives was so perfect as well. So. But why don't you start off a little bit, just kind of like talking about your testimony, and kind of start kind of as a single guy, and where you went from there.
Okay, sure. So I grew up in a small town, Mountain Pine. It's outside of Hot Springs a little ways. I grew up. It was kind of funny though. When I was born, we lived in I say funny. Wasn't funny at the time, I guess. We lived in a 3-room tar paper shack, basically. And right after my mom brought me home, I was about 2 weeks old, and there was a flood. We lived between two creeks at the time, the Glazy Po and the Little Glazy Po. It was becoming a flood. Well, they were becoming one creek, basically. We were actually rescued by the National Guard out of a helicopter. So
how many weeks was this after?
I was 2 weeks old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was, it was quite an exciting. My mom still has the picture that was cut out of the paper with us flying in a helicopter. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, pretty cool. So anyway, grew up pretty much really, really close to that, actually, right across the creek from that house, actually. And it became a barn for my uncle's cows. But kind of interesting. I have 2 older brothers. They're twins. They're 2 years older than me, and I always like to follow them around, and try to do the things that they did. But they really didn't care for that much, me tagging along. So they'd always do things to try to get rid of me, kind of. So they actually hung me in my grandfather's garage one time, but my toes are still touching the ground, sort of. My grandmother found me a little while later, hanging from the rafters of his garage. But and then another time they sent me to my grandfather's beehives. I didn't know what they were at the time, but they told me there was little people in those. So I needed to go up there and knock on those and to see those little people. I found out pretty quick what they were. So
as big brothers do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Big brothers before.
So no, we grew up in the times where we rode bicycles all the time. We were outside all the time from daylight to dark. We'd come back in for lunch and come back in for dinner, that kind of thing. So we grew up in the times. I think that was the good old days. I think parents didn't have to worry too much about their kids as far as, who they're talking to, the text messages and what they're watching on the internet and things like that. There was none of that.
Matter of fact, able to monitor it quite a bit.
Yeah. There was nothing like that. Like our phone was a rotary dial phone. So to top that off, we had a party line. So for those who don't know what a party line is, there was other people on the same line. So you pick the phone up and there may be somebody on the other end over there talking.
Yeah, it would be like your neighbor too, right? Like it'd be like people. Yeah.
In the same area.
That. Yeah.
Well, ours was an 8-party line. So the norm was kind of a 4-party line. So ours was 8. We even had twice as many people on ours. We were popular, I guess. I don't know. So you'd be having a conversation with somebody and somebody would pick the phone up. Hey, I need to use the phone.
So was it awkward having like dating conversations or anything?
You really didn't have dating conversations.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be rough.
We would have the cord, hanging, and we would be in the closet or something, trying to not let our parents hear us talking. We could trace the cord. So, anyway, no, we had a great. We grew up in a great family. It was a quiet family. My parents I didn't really see a lot of affection between my parents. It was just something that they didn't show, I guess. My mom took us to church on Sundays. My dad was either working, fishing, or hunting, something along those lines. And when my brothers got older, they started hunting and fishing with him, and I was kind of left out. I was the oddball, the black sheep. It ended up being the black sheep kind of thing. But I remember when I was a kid, a young boy, I walked the aisle of our little country church, and I prayed a prayer, and there didn't have any life change. There was nothing there, but I thought that's all there was to it. Basically, nobody told me anything about having a relationship with Christ at that time, so I didn't have any life change at all. So I went through life pretty much thinking that I was saved from that. So then I just go and do whatever. So kind of go into my teenage years. I started drinking early on, around the age of 13. First time I had anything to drink was at 13, and that just continued to get worse as I got into high school and things like that. And a lot of things that I'm not proud of. My school days were basically, my teachers would ask me, why can't you be more like your brothers? Because my brothers never got into trouble, and I couldn't seem to get out of trouble. So what I did is I found myself learning to lie and how to hide things, to keep things from people, so I wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
So I got pretty good at that, or so I thought I did.
What were like the things that you, like looking back, that drove you to drinking at such an early age? Like, was it just peer pressure, or was there something else that you think kind of contributed to that?
So I guess peer pressure, so to speak. At the time I didn't know what peer pressure was.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's a lot different now, but back then, actually, the first time that I had something to drink, I was actually visiting my aunt and uncle in Virginia, and they had a lot of alcohol. My parents didn't have alcohol in the house, so I really didn't have a lot of exposure to it.
Gotcha.
So when I went to Virginia to visit them, I was there for about a month. My cousins, they were a little wilder than me, I should say, and they kind of introduced me to that. So they thought it was funny to get me intoxicated while my aunt and uncle were out that night. So anyway, that was the first time that I experienced it. But then it just kind of was the thing to do, I guess, to rebel, I guess, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So anyway, my high school years, I had a lot of that going on. I mean, my main goal in high school was basketball, and I like to make people laugh. And I really didn't care, who I hurt in the process of making, somebody laugh, if I could do that. So even if it was at the expense of my teachers and, things like that. So even later in life, I remember going to one of my high school teachers and apologizing to him for some of the things that I did, back when we were, yeah. So, but yeah, that's kind of my growing up times. And so out of high school, I didn't didn't go to college. I didn't pursue, further education at the time. Nobody in my family did. It wasn't a priority.
Gotcha. I was going to ask, like, what was kind of the reasoning for that?
It wasn't a priority. Nobody in my family went to college. Now, after I got to work at the fire, went to work at the fire department, I did go to college and get an associate's degree in fire science. But that was later down the road. So the thing in Mountain Pine, and I swore that I wouldn't do, is if you didn't go to college, you went to work at Weyerhaeuser. And I made a vow to myself that I would never do that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
So I kind of went out and did some other things, but I got a job and I started working. About age 23, I got married for the first time. I married a girl, and we got married for all the wrong reasons. The things that we thought would make us happy. It only lasted about 2 years, and I found out she was having an affair, and tried to work through that, but she didn't want to, so we didn't reconcile. So we ended up getting a divorce. So it wasn't too long after that my cousin, I had a wonderful, precious cousin and still dear to me today, but she wanted me to meet her best friend, and her best friend was Carrie Norton. She was from Dallas, Texas, or Arlington, actually. So when I first met her, I mean, she was a knockout. She was gorgeous, and she's way out of my league. But hey, I'm up for a challenge, right? So I'm that guy. So I was still running around wild and drinking and stuff like that. And Carrie, she was, and I always, in my testimony, I always say she was a real churchy girl. So she was, my cousin knew that I needed somebody like her in my life. And God knew that I needed somebody like her in my life. So I met her.
What was your relationship, right, like with church at that point? Like, you had just gotten through a divorce, right? So were you going to church? Were you kind of living out any of your faith at that point? Talk a little bit about that.
Not at all. I was furthest thing from that, I guess. And I look back and it's like, man, I don't know how I made it, to be honest with you. I was out drinking every night. I say every night, I mean a lot of nights. Even, working, I go to work, come home, change clothes, and go back out doing those drinking and doing other things that I shouldn't be doing, for sure. But no, church was not a part of my life at that time.
Gotcha.
So and I met Carrie, and she was very active in church, and she started coming around, and we started dating, and I started to change slowly. I stopped running around with the people that I was running around with, doing the things that I was doing, and started going to church with her. But all the time, I still thought back to that trip down the aisle, and I still thought I was safe. So I was good. I wasn't a bad guy. I didn't think, I hadn't killed anybody or anything like that.
Yeah.
Didn't think I was horrible.
What were the, like, when you started to change? So you start going to church. Were there any, like, did anybody around you, like any of your friends that you were hanging out with, just kind of be like, well, what's this all about? Like, why are you doing that? Like, was there any type of pressure, maybe outside pressure, that was trying to keep you from that?
Sure. For a while there was, because of the guys that I had been hanging out with all the time. They wondered what happened to me, basically. And when I talked to them, it's like, well, I've met somebody, and I'm trying to straighten up, basically, to get away from that life. And the way I'm making it sound, maybe I don't feel like I was an alcoholic, but I like to party. So I like to do those. You
just kind of like kept it under that banner. Yeah. Like, I'm not really an alcoholic. I just party. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to party. I like to have fun and, go out with the guys and hang out and shoot guns. I mean, we'd go out, shooting guns all the time and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah. 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 Yep.
Four wheeling or whatever it would be. And then, I mean, there was a time when I started, hunting and fishing with another friend of mine, which was a pretty good influence in my life, and no drinking or anything like that, but still no involvement in church. But then until Carrie came along, and then I started going to church with her. Um, so so yeah, so we um, dated for a while, and in 1989 we decided to get married, and we got married. Her mom and her stepdad weren't crazy about me at first, for the simple fact that I had been married before, and of course she had not. But then they finally kind of gave in and started liking me anyway. So
Well,
got
hang
married.
on. So was Carrie hesitant about that?
Yes,
Was
very
she?
much so. Yeah,
How did
absolutely.
y'all kind of work through that, or is it something that like even carried on after y'all were married?
Yeah, a little bit. We'll talk about that. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, she was very apprehensive, I guess is the word, about it at first. But and I mean, this is kind of her. That's kind of her story to tell, maybe. But
Sure.
The maybe the life that she was living with her mom and her stepdad was a little bit volatile, so to speak. And I think she was wanting to get away from that, perhaps. And that's a story for her to tell. But
Sure. Well, I know. So for me personally, like I had been with someone before marriage. And so what's interesting is like, we're 10 years into marriage, Courtney and I, but like we even started having conversations like in re-engage this semester. And it was really something that Courtney didn't bring up a lot. Like I honestly, I kind of divulged everything really up front at the beginning of our relationship, when we really first started dating. And what she was more worried about was my disease that I had at the time that was supposed to shorten my lifespan than that topic. And so it was really interesting. I wasn't sure how she was going to take that. She ended up being like, that's between you and God. Like this was before we got together. But then just this past, month or so, we've been talking about it. And it was actually something she kind of struggled with kind of within the first few years of our marriage, kind of quietly, like, and so I'm curious kind of like how that worked out, how y'all worked through that yourself, if it continued after you got married
yeah. And for you guys, I mean, you say, you've been married 8 years into your marriage. I mean, we were, before we started having conversations like that, we were probably in 20 plus years of marriage, before we discussed that, which, I mean, I know she struggled with those thoughts at times because of that. But I think that was a struggle for her.
Yeah.
And anyway, I mean, definitely that's her story to tell, but I think that was an issue for
I think
her.
that's definitely something that like people should know, though, is like there are, like, I guess for guys, for instance, it doesn't come in your mind a lot. Like, at least for me personally, like I don't think of anyone else. But it seems that commonly women would kind of think about that a lot more, and you don't understand how your past affects you. And I think a lot of people kind of silently suffer. And I think it's something that, I mean, it's a topic that's come up that's actually helped us be more known to each other, right? Which is one of the goals with Reengage. And so
it is right, and absolutely, and since we started taking Reengage and I mean, you said you're which is funny, kind of, you're thinking about taking it again. I mean, we took it probably 4 times, and then we started actually leading Reengage after about 4 semesters. The first couple of times, I didn't want to be there. That's not what and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
To kind of finish that out. But yeah, we started talking about that stuff after that, because when we start talking about communication and Reengage, that's one of the big issues of couples, is being able to talk to people. We didn't have anything like that until we started taking Reengage. We didn't have marriage counseling prior to getting married. So
yeah, that's an interesting topic as well, because like I don't think very many people, like Courtney and I had discussed this, like we've always really had something available to us specifically around building and helping to build our marriage, and whether that just be something like counseling that is always available, or a pastor to talk to. But I think we've really been lucky, because from what I can hear, like marriage conferences or something like Reengage was not a very common thing, even just 10 or more years ago.
Right. And it's a lot more nowadays, of course. You hear of it a lot more, but back then, our marriage counseling was one meeting with the pastor that did our ceremony. And basically he was kind of going over the rules of what he wanted how he wanted the ceremony to go, not like what did we want. So that was kind of interesting. But nowadays there's so much available to people. Thank goodness. I wish we'd have had something like Reengage back then.
So you and Carrie decide to get married then, right?
And I'm gonna have to find my place here, because I've kind of been, and actually we got married, and shortly after we got married, she started having some medical problems, and so she had some surgery, major surgery done shortly after, and I remember very well the day that she had her surgery, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I'm waiting on the doctor to come back in to give me, whatever news. And when he comes in, one of the first things he said was, "I hope you guys weren't planning on having children." And at the time, of course, we hadn't been married that long, so we really hadn't talked about having children. It wasn't a big issue, but it was quite a blow at that time when he said that. But God had other plans, because actually, I always get emotional here but actually, 8 months later, we had our son, Hunter. And he was a miracle. There's no other way to describe that, because when they were doing the surgery, she was actually pregnant at the time, and they didn't do a test or anything like that. So when I say that he was a miracle, he is truly a miracle to be here. But so now he was right about one, we couldn't have children, but God gave us one child. So when Hunter was born, that my life kind of changed, my whole thought process. I mean, Hunter was my life at that time. That was, when he was born, I mean, he became my life. We started to have some problems after that, because all of my attention would go to him. I didn't learn till way later, how the priorities God has designed. God first, marry your wife second, and then your family. I put my son before my wife for many years.
How did that manifest? I mean, it's kind of like, can you explain maybe a way or two that kind of prioritization took place?
I mean, it's just that pride, you're proud to have that kid. He took first place. I mean, whatever he needed, whatever. The funny thing after that, I guess, not funny, but I always say that, but shortly after that, when I went to work at the fire department, he was a young child. Well, then that became my number one, I guess, because that's where all my time went. I spent a lot of time away from that. So then that caused some issues as well. But the thing was, we didn't realize, I guess, that we were in that bad of a shape at the time, because we'd always able to work through them. But there's always that part that's missing, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So not too long after I started working at the fire department, I had one of the guys invited me to go to Second Baptist Church, which is now Crossgate, and we went to church there. And I remember the first Sunday we were there, and we just really seemed to fit. We loved it there. The people were just super friendly. We really felt connected. Shortly after that, we joined the church. We made some awesome friends that we still have to this day from that time. And Carrie got very involved in the church. She was involved in a lot of different things. I got involved somewhat, but the part that I was involved in was the technical side. I ran sound, things like that. I was the guy in the background. I didn't like to be out front and be seen. She was doing Bible studies, and she was growing in her relationship, and I was finding out that I had something missing in my life. I would see, all my friends were at church were on fire for the Lord, and I knew something was missing in my life. But I worked at the fire department, and that is a whole different life. I was different culture. I was one way at work, and I was a totally different way at home and at church. So I was playing two different people.
Yeah.
So that would take its toll. That was very tiring. Playing that kind of thing. But I remember pastor at the time, he did a sermon on the wheat and the tares, and out of Matthew, and it basically it's I'm in there. I look like wheat, but I'm not wheat. I mean, I'm that guy. I'm the fake guy. And that really spoke to me. And from then, I just knew that something was missing. But every time, God would be speaking to me, I would not respond because of the guys at work, I guess. How would that make me look? I couldn't change. If I changed, then I'm going to miss out on all the fun things that I did. I cursed like a sailor. I was doing tobacco. I was still drinking. I was gambling. All those things on the side. People at church had no idea, the life that I was living there too.
So you're saying it was more the pressure of the people at your work than necessarily the people at church?
Yeah.
Like, did you struggle much with that?
No, not really. And that's kind of weird, I guess.
That's interesting. No, I've just heard I think it's interesting that it's the people on that side and not the people on the church. I've heard a couple of testimonies of some friends of mine where it was later in life that they came to actually have a relationship with Jesus and really start walking right with God. And they said it was more the pressure of what would people think at church, since they had been there for so long, right? But it's interesting that you're actually at work.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but on the way that it was hitting me is I had everybody fooled at church. So I was still to the fact that I still think back to that time when I walked that aisle. And I'm like, actually, I think I'm okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
But now if I change, now then the guys at work's going to see me, and that I don't want to blame it on them. I mean, it's all me.
No. It's good. It's good to hear kind of that perspective of it, though, because I hadn't thought about that. I think that's one.
No, I think maybe that kept me from walking the aisle as well. I think that the enemy was reminding me that I walked the aisle. I got all that taken care of years ago. Yeah, I wasn't that bad. I wasn't that bad of a guy.
Right.
But anyway, it's kind of weird. But actually, on February the 10th, 1999, we were having a revival. It was called The Awakening, and I was running sound. I was in the sound booth, and the pastor, the evangelist that was there at the time, he gave the invitation, and I couldn't hold it any longer. Pastor Rob, that you had on the podcast a while back, he was actually the music director, pastor of worship there at the time, and he actually came running up to the sound booth to take over sound as I came down. So it was a very interesting night, so to speak. So at that point, man, God changed my life. Things were great. Things were going good for a while. I changed. I mean, God took away some very bad habits that I had for years that I, that could never kick, could never get rid of. And with God's help, I mean, I was able to get rid of that. So was I perfect? No, not at all. Did we still have some issues? Absolutely, we had issues. And when the enemy knows he's beat, he doesn't give up.
Yeah.
He's gonna stay there, and he's gonna hit you when you're down, and he knows your weaknesses, and he's gonna use those against you. So.
Yep. So that's when things started changing, even at work, at that point, right?
Yeah, for the most part, but there was some things that I would still kind of hold on to. There was things like I didn't let them all the way in, and I got a buddy of mine that's at work, and I'm kind of jealous of him because he's from the time I'm front for anybody. He's lived out his faith the whole time in front of those guys, and I'm jealous of that. I wish that I would have done that sooner.
What were the things that the things that you were holding back? What was the thing that kind of transformed those areas?
I guess I'm like the cursing and things like that.
Gotcha.
The things I was still doing.
Did those kind of like come over time, or was it something that you finally? Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's just something that I tried to. It's interesting because I guess since I was a child, I had a bad mouth. I guess you would say foul mouth or whatever. But that started changing, but it didn't come all at once.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyway, what I was talking about, the Satan, he doesn't give up at all, and he begins to work on us. But everything was going great for a while. And I'm gonna fast forward again a little bit, and I'm gonna get to a part of my life that I'm definitely not proud of. And it's hard for me to talk about because I began, we had it pretty good for quite a while, but I began to pull away from God again, and my wife and son and friends, and I began to isolate myself. And I was allowing sin to enter my life, and I let the temptations get the best of me. James 1:13-15 says, "When tempted, no one should say, 'God is tempting me,' for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after the desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death." And in 1 Corinthians 10:13, Paul says, "No temptation has overtaken us except as common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will also provide a way out so you can endure it." And that is so true that, God always gives us that way out, but we don't always take it. Sometimes we open that door and we go through it. So I began to give into sin, and it's kind of like a whirlpool effect. You kind of get started off, and you get in it, and it starts off slow at first, and then it begins to to suck you in. But I fell for the lies of the enemy in a big way. At this time, Carrie and I had been married for a little over 25 years, and we'd been through a lot, but nothing like what we're about to go through. Began to feel that I wasn't happy in my marriage. The enemy had put these thoughts in my mind, and that maybe I could be happy somewhere else. Psalms 101:3 says, "I was setting a worthless thing before my eyes." And as I continued to isolate myself, and in isolation, the things that your mind runs, and you do things that you shouldn't do. But I began to get into pornography. And as I did that, and I don't know, for guys it may be harder, but our phones are so easy to look at that stuff, that trash, and it's dark. But anyway, so I got into that, and all the time it began to make those lies even more increase. That I'm not happy where I'm at. Maybe I could be happier somewhere else. Maybe with someone else. So I began to believe those lies. So guys, if you're doing that, if you're looking at pornography, please get help. Please ask for help. Please do something. I think if I hadn't been isolated, if I'd have been in a community with people at that time, we were going to church every Sunday. We were sitting there like everything was fine. Nobody knew any different.
Yeah.
We'd go to church on Sunday mornings. We'd go to the service. We'd leave right after so we could get to the restaurants before anybody else. We didn't have a community, the small group or the life groups to help us through anything.
Yeah, I think accountability is actually the thing that Satan hates most a lot of times, because when you've got whether it be for guys, other guys, or women, other women, that you allow 100% access, and that you allow to keep you accountable. I think that's when you start to see progress.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, it's huge, people, and I didn't believe that for a long time, but it is so vital to be in community with people, to let people get to know you. Let people know where you're at. What's going on in your life. It's so important. But as that began to get worse, and my wife around here, Carrie would come to me and she'd say, what's wrong? And I would say, for so long, nothing. Absolutely, nothing. And I would tell her nothing. And then finally one day she came to me, and she said, what's the matter? And I told her that I wasn't happy. And that's basically what I told her, and that I wanted a divorce. And just floored her, I guess. So that kind of led up to that. So I'm gonna kind of fast forward through that again.
Sure.
And so I met someone, and another woman, and we started to communicate. And it was innocent enough at first, I guess. I say that it wasn't, but I thought that it was. We were texting and communicating by email and things like that. First, it started off through emails, actually. And I remember the day that this is the day that I think I crossed the line, is I sent her my cell phone number and told her if she needed anything to let me know. And we began to text each other and having a relationship just via text, phone calls, and things like that.
Yeah.
Down the road, it ended up leading to a physical relationship. Began having an affair with this woman.
And so the emotional, would you say that you were having like an emotional affair before having the physical affair? I think that's something that like a lot of people, similar to how you were thinking with alcohol, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, I just kind of like to party. I think a lot of people think that an emotional affair where you're texting or you're calling is fine. Like you're not having an affair, but like that is one of the things I think in my own life. I mean, my biological fathers had 6 wives and cheated on every single one of them. And I saw that pattern and how that unfolded. And every single time it started with this emotional affair first, and before it ever reached any type of physical affair.
Affairs don't happen. I don't go out one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to have an affair today." That's not
Right.
not the way they happen. So,
Yeah.
it began over time. And there was, I remember back, there were several times that, that I would tell her, this can't go on. We have to cut this off. And then it would just cut back up. And then it began to be a physical affair. This went on for, quite a while. And just to kind of make a long story short, I guess, Carrie was going through, actually her mother was having a problem with her cell phone or something. She was on her cell phone plan. Carrie got the bill out one evening and was going through it, and she found that I had texted the same number. I think she said it was like 8,000 times in 1 month. So she knew, I think her worst fears, she knew that her worst fears were coming true.
Yeah.
So, this still went on. She didn't say anything for a while, but I know she was seeking help on her side, and kind of guidance on what to do. But I'll never forget the night that she confronted me. She came in. I was actually playing a video game, and I was actually texting this woman at the same time. And she came in, and I saw her in the kitchen, and she came through the door, and she confronted me about it. She was, of course, I mean, as you can imagine, that she was very angry. She said some things at the time, which I don't blame her. I think at the time I wanted her to find out about it, and I wanted her to kick me out, basically. But she showed me grace, and that I didn't deserve, and I wasn't ready to accept. And she asked me if she forgave me. I didn't ask for forgiveness, but she told me that I forgive you. And
what was your reaction to that?
It kind of made me angry.
Really?
That's not what I had anticipated or what I thought I wanted at the time. So I expected her to kick me out. That didn't happen at the time. Yeah. So this went on for months. I would end it. It would start back up again. I would end it. So this vicious cycle just kept going. And finally, one day I came home from work, and she had packed my truck with my things and said that I had to leave. Until I ended it for good, I was not welcome. So I talked her into letting me stay that night, because I didn't have anywhere to go. What was I going to do? So she agreed to let me stay, and I found a buddy of mine had a rent house and found a place to stay. So I left the next day, took all my stuff, moved in. And that first night away I had a lot of time to wrestle with God. It began to hit me. I'm walking away. At that time, it was 27 years of marriage that I was walking away from the woman that loves me unconditionally. And I was walking away from that. The next morning, I remember waking up in that it was the house. It was just it was a cold and dark house. It was not the best of conditions, but the next morning I woke up and I got my phone and I opened up Facebook, and I looked at Facebook, and the first thing I saw was Hunter, my son, had put a post on there, and it was a post that he said, I'm gonna leave this right here. He said, I needed this so much today, and it was a song by Colton Dixon, All That Matters. And I listened to the song, and I sat there and I cried like a baby. course, listening to that. And the song had not, I mean, it had hardly finished playing, and I got a text from Carrie, and it was a very long text. God's timing is perfect. So she said in the text, just in a nutshell, basically that this is not going to be my story. She said, she wasn't going to give me a divorce, and that God had other plans. And it was just it was a long text, but anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell. That basically.
Yeah.
And I told her, and I asked her. And first of all, I told her, I said, well, I'm so sorry for what I've done to you and to Hunter. And I asked her if she would meet me somewhere before work. This was a work day. And I asked her if she would meet me somewhere before work. And she agreed. So we met, and we asked, actually, Pastor Rob, we asked him to come meet with us as well. And we met and we talked for quite a while. In a parking lot on the side of Malvern Avenue. And at the end, after we got through with everything, at the end, I asked her if I could come back home. Now, this was after one night away. I asked her if I could come back home, and I told her that I would never leave again. And I think she was reluctant at first, just to give, I guess, give back in that easily. But then she agreed. And, she agreed to let me come back home, and we found out real fast that that's not the end. There's a lot of work to do from that point forward. We began to meet with some friends. We got some amazing friends that walked through that with us. And I remember the first one that we met with, they said, this is going to be the hardest thing that you've ever done, that you've ever walked through. And they were so right. We had a long way to go, but with those friends, it really helped out.
Yeah,
absolutely. They got down in the trenches with us.
Yeah.
But finally, we were on our way to recovery. It's so vital to have friends like that that'll get in the trenches with you, and that's what I talked about earlier, is the community. And like I said, honestly I don't believe if I'd have had that accountability and community, I don't think I would have ever been in that position in the first place. I believe in that so much.
What were some of the other kind of practical things that you found really help keep you kind of like from going to those vices and the sin that you were looking for?
So, it wasn't easy. I mean, at all. But I think the further we got into it, God really got a hold of me. He put a longing in my heart, and I can skip way forward if you want me to. But
no, go ahead. I was just seeing if there was anything at that stage that you were like,
no. And actually, it was, if it hadn't been for those people, that was there with us, I think I would have fell right back in. Honestly.
Yep.
It was so hard at times. It was so hard. I remember nights that, we would get into arguments or whatever, and we would call Brother Rob and Tula, and they would be back over at our house, helping us walk through something. My wife, my son, they were so hurt. There were so many things to heal. And I wasn't still in a place to make that happen, I guess.
Could you talk a little bit about how your son dealt with that a little bit? Like, how did things change with you and your son as you moved out and then moved back in?
Man, that was very tough. He is very protective of his mother, which I'm so thankful for. He was here with his mom through the whole thing. He was her rock, basically, at that time. He didn't, it damaged our relationship severely. I think I think we're still working, through some of that. Recently, I mean, it hadn't been very long ago at all. I got a phone call from him one morning on the way to work, and he told me that there was, he held some things in and he forgave me for all those things. That was just a few weeks ago. So it's hard. I mean, even our son's grown, but it's still hard on him to see us go through that kind of thing. We have, I think we're mending the relationship. We're close, but I don't think we're as close as we would have been had that not happened, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I just remember you saying, that, he was the number one in your life for so long. And so I can imagine that was a hard hit for both you and him, and kind of a two-way street in that relationship.
Yeah. It's been a struggle. It's been hard. It's been hard on him for sure. And then plus, he's a police officer, and some of the things that he sees, I think that kind of adds to it, and the stresses, and that doesn't help him, but I mean, he loves his job, but he does a lot of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, we working through those things. And so that part of my story is always hard to talk about. It's embarrassing, for, people that, and, doing this, there's going to be a lot more people that hear my story. It's always, when we share a story and re-engage, it always brings up, memories that are not pleasant. So it's kind of hard. But, my goal is if it can help one person, then it's worth it.
Yep.
Well, I was listening to back when I was doing this is when I was doing my preparing to give my story at the men's conference last year, and I'd listened to a sermon by Kyle Ottoman, and it was called "Grace is Greater Than." He talks about the Bible talks about sin as being a virus, and how Adam, it spread throughout the world, and Paul tells us in Romans 5:12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because of sin. We've all been diagnosed with this virus. We all sin, and we all have death coming as a result. But then we'll find out that there's a cure, and there's an antidote, and it's grace. And God's grace is so amazing, and we don't deserve it. We don't deserve any of it. And His grace is greater than all those secrets that we have in our hearts, that we harbor. They're greater than all those sins, all those things that we've done, and He will give it freely. All you have to do is ask Him for it, and come to Him and lay it down. But those secrets will kill you. I mean, they'll just eat you away. And I had a lot of secrets for so long. And we talk a lot in Reengage about, sharing that last 10%, of those things that you've held back so long that's eating away at you.
Yeah.
I want to share another thing real quick. I don't know how much time we got. I don't know what
we're good.
I don't know what the time frame is, but there's a book out, and it's been out for a long time. It's actually, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's called Post Secret, and it started off as an experiment. Are you familiar with that?
No, I've not heard of that one.
Okay, so it's called Post Secret, and what happened is this guy's name is Frank Warren, and he put out 3,000 postcards, and he left them out in public where people could find them. This has been several years back. So in the postcards, he invited everybody to anonymously contribute a secret to a group project, to reveal any secret that they wanted to, as long as it's true and they've never shared it with anyone else. So what happened is those things started coming in like crazy. Well, this thing is going on now. There's websites and and all that for it. But it's interesting to see some of the secrets that people shared on those things. And some of them, when I started reading, some of them are funny, some of them are weird, some of them are disturbing. One of them I read that was funny. It said, "When I'm mad at my husband, I put boogers in his soup." So if you make your wife mad and she makes you soup, I don't know, you might want to be careful. So,
check your food.
Yeah, and then there was one that was a Starbucks employee that said, "I give decaf customers to customers that are rude to me." And then there was one that said, "I wish my father had forgiven me while he was still alive." And then there was one that said, "I plant hair on my boyfriend's clothes and hope that his wife will find it." So these are secrets that people are sharing. But I guess the last one, and it said when I read this, it said the last one in the book. It said, it says, "I've told all my secrets and now I feel free." But once you get those secrets out, it's freeing. But really, just telling the secrets isn't the freedom. Not without grace. Not without God's grace to forgive you for those things. His grace, God's grace is so bigger than those things that we harbor and we hold in. That there's a song by Matthew West that pretty much sums that up as far as the grace part. It says, "For the prodigal son, grace wins. For the woman at the well, grace wins. For the blind man and the beggar, grace wins. And for always and forever, grace wins. For the world that is lost, grace wins." So just a couple of, and I don't know, where you're going after, from this.
Well, I'd love to actually dig into, so like one of the things that I think are an important part that we kind of touched on at the beginning, but we were talking about re-engage and how y'all had gone through it a couple of times and your heart was very kind of against it those first couple of times,
Right.
before kind of the fallout of everything, right?
Yep. Actually, probably 2.5 times into it, I didn't want to be, for sure. The first time I didn't want to be there. I was there just because Carrie wanted me to come, and I'm going to try something.
Right.
Tried it, and I absolutely got nothing out of it. I didn't do any of the homework. We fought every week, and it just didn't work. And I don't recall if it was the next time about halfway through or the third time about halfway through, I really started digging in and really started getting into that, the meat of it. And there's so many practical tools that you can use. And re-engage is not just for people that are in trouble, not for people that are in crisis. It's something that you can use to as tools in your marriage to walk you through marriage, to walk you through all those problems too.
Yeah, I think that's a big misconception, is like people are like, "Oh, you're going to a marriage conference or you're doing a marriage class.
Yeah.
There must be something just like terribly wrong going on." And it's not the case all the time. And like a lot, but it provides you tools to build an even healthier marriage. I know, like the first time we were going through re-engage, I was excited about it. Courtney was like, "Yeah, I think it'll be good." And because we'd kind of reached this point where things were good, and I was like, "But is this as good as it gets? Like, is it a plateau at this point, or does it get better?" And like what I've discovered going through it twice now is that every single time we do something to invest in our marriage, it gets a little bit better. I love that they in re-engage will have you rate your marriage 1 through 10. And it was so funny, like when the first time we went through it, we both kind of like scored higher or something, like I think a 7 or 8. But then at the end of it, we were like, we're a 6, but we're excited to be a 6 because we know there's a lot to work on. And then the second time, this time that we're currently going through it, we rated it a 6.5 at the end of the first time. At the beginning of the second time, we rated it a 6, but we were excited too, because we were like, we know there's stuff to work on here. But I think it's actually exciting that we're not at like a 10. And because I just really enjoy the process of getting better. And that's the same thing in like my work, my like business. I enjoy the process. I enjoy, grinding and getting better at whatever it is that I'm trying to focus on.
Right.
And I think that's what is important, is that like, even if you're in a good spot, one, there's not a plateau. It can get better, but I think you really have to invest in your marriage and gain those tools that help you and your spouse to really get to that place.
One of the other neat things about Reengage is, we've had people in there that have been married for literally weeks, and then we've had people that have been married for 40 plus years, and it's awesome to see even the people that have been there 40 plus years, to see them at the end of it and see what they rated their marriage, how they compared it. We get to see those cards at the beginning and the end. So it's really, our goal, of course, is that you take ground during Reengage. You don't lose ground. So it's our goal.
Well, and I think it's such a testament to, y'all, I think you've said y'all went through it 4 or 5 times, and you've led it a couple of times.
And interesting little story there. Of course, Rob and Tula, they brought Reengage to Crossgate, and they were they're in the marriage ministry. What a heart for marriage that they have. And we've been friends with them since early on, when we started going to Second Baptist Church. We were dear friends of theirs, and I remember Tula telling Carrie that someday we're going to be in ministry with them, and to see that happen is really just joyful. So, of course, I never would have believed that years ago, but to be a part of it now is just amazing. But yeah, we took it. I think on our 4th time, we went through it as apprentice leaders. So with Debbie and Kevin Arnold actually were leading, and we were in their class as apprentices, and that was the first time that we had a part of leading. And I think our heart was really growing or I know it was. There's no doubt for marriages that are in crisis. Since then, Rob, Pastor Rob, was interim pastor for a while at church, and they had so much on their plate. And they asked us if we would come in and lead the Reengage as a whole. That's quite a interesting for me, for somebody that likes to be in the background, but it's such a blessing to be able to be a part of that. But God has burdened Carrie and I so much for marriages, that even we kind of helped lead one of the marriage conferences, and a little over a year ago, God laid on our hearts to so Reengage is a semester-based class, and there's times when people that if they have a crisis, they don't have a place to go. So God began to lay on our heart to start a class, a life group, for a place for marriages to go. If they were in crisis, they could come to our class, and they would have, we would be able to help them, kind of walk with them through that. The class has grown considerably in the past year. The neat thing, and when God is so good, on last year on August the 4th, we were able to start the class. August the 4th was our 30th anniversary. Nice. So we started that class on our 30th anniversary. So that was a really neat thing.
Do that. I said, praise God for that. I mean, it's just like, again, God's timing, right? Like it's so
it's just perfect. So, but anyway, that, we're just so blessed to be a part of that, and our heart for marriages, and to just to be able to, it's not anything that we've done. I mean, and we try so hard to give God the glory for where we are,
Yeah.
because He is truly amazing that we're even here today.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like the world would kind of discount y'all from being a marriage that would lead a marriage
Oh,
class or
absolutely.
anything like that. But it's actually like God's grace. Like y'all are actually makes y'all the perfect people to lead a marriage class and to share. And I think that's one of the things when I think about, like we were talking about building generational wisdom, and I think there's a lot here, like your story. I think there's a lot of people out there that are silently suffering, or that are silently isolating themselves, much like you said you did. And I I think it's something that needs to be talked about more, especially from kind of a Christian worldview of, look, isolating yourself, these thoughts, none of this is the way it's supposed to be. Like God designed it to be perfect, and yes, because of the fall, like there's definitely things that we will struggle with, but with the accountability and the availability of that community, much like that surrounded you, and now you and Carrie are using yourselves to surround other people in that same situation, it is possible for your marriage to like continue, and it doesn't have to end in divorce.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's so many marriages that just end up in divorce, and I think if like you said, I think your story is one that will resonate with a lot of people, and I think just one person, turning and even just reaching out to you or the podcast ourselves, like we definitely want to be a resource for them.
And we shared at a marriage conference a year or so ago, and after that, it was amazing the people that came up to us that asking advice, and we don't have all the answers by no stretch of the imagination, but we know the one who does.
Yeah,
and that's where we point them. So
yeah,
it's very heartbreaking to see, and there it's so heartbreaking to see the ones that don't get it, that give up, because God has so much more for you.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other topics you wanted to touch?
No, I think that's it. But I will say that we're coming up on 31 years of marriage, and I would say that the last 3 have been such the best. It's so amazing. So
yeah, here's to 30 more, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Carlton, for coming on and hanging out and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, buddy. See ya.